Welcome back to the nationally syndicated Price of Business show. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. And I'd love to say it's a show that never ends. And what I mean by that is it continues 24/7 at priceofbusiness.com, where we're always adding new content, audio, video, articles, and more. Also, while you're there, make sure you sign up for our newsletter called Read Instead. It's the best of our program. It includes New York Times bestselling authors, Nobel Prize winners, major media personalities, and more. Make sure you get that. Got a great topic today. Frankly, this topic is on so many people's mind, no matter where they live, which is really kind of new, Kevin Downs. You know, there's a time where, you know, this part of the country is really bad for ... This part of the country is really rough when it comes to ... And now it just seems like everything's bad. Everywhere's bad at everything in the last decade. It's incredible. And you are in ground zero of one of the toughest places when it comes to all things natural disasters, which is Florida. And you're in the front lines with your work as a public adjuster. Glad to have you on the program. Take a moment. And by the way, I found your background very interesting, an insurance background going into this space. I love that. You bring a lot of tools that, frankly, you need an adjuster who knows how the enemy, I hate to say it, but that it is adversarial, how the enemy thinks. So, Kevin, welcome to the program. A little bit about your firm. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, my name is Kevin Downs. Our firm is Ask an Adjuster, and we've been in business now nearly 20 years. I started my career initially as an insurance agent. I sold policies for about 5 years here in Florida. A hurricane hit. I realized tons of my neighbors were going to need help getting the money out of the insurance company. And so I switched over. I became a public insurance adjuster. We're now in both Florida and California. We help people recover money from the insurance companies as their adjuster.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, those are two ideologically very different states. But ironically, even with that, California is a very difficult place when it comes to dealing with insurance companies. Might be surprising to listeners.
Very much so. We have a new office in Los Angeles. We started that process late last year. As you know, the wildfires had broke out, one of the largest natural disasters in the history of the country. And it's unbelievable what we're seeing. We're seeing improper testing. We're seeing people that are owed policy limits that are only being given half. And we've already got several case studies where we've helped single moms double their recovery on a total loss within 60 days after a wildfire, one of the biggest in the history of the country. So it doesn't surprise me, but in this day and age, if you do not have your own adjuster, you're definitely missing out.
Yes, and my advice is again, listeners know I was in the insurance and health and life side for many years. You know, and in my space, not so much, but I knew, like, for example, whenever we had a client who wanted long-term care insurance, this is one of those types of insurances where if you don't know your stuff, you're going to mess the client up. I would always bring in an expert. You know, the reality is that when you make a claim and you don't know what you're doing, which unless you do this for a living, you don't know what you're doing, you're highly likely to undermine some, if not all, of the dollars you deserve in a claim. It's one of the very first things a person should do before they even call the insurance company is to visit with an adjuster long enough. And remember, adjusters make money only if you make money. If they think you can handle it and it's, you know, something that, you know, their assistance isn't needed, they'll be glad to tell you because they're not making any money unless you make money. To me, it's so logical, Kevin.
That's exactly right. You know, our biggest piece of advice is if you own a property and you pay for insurance, you should have your own public adjuster in your Rolodex. Not because you may ever have a claim, but it's likely you might. And so we go out all the time. We do a free inspection, a free policy review, and we just tell people, you know, what they're owed. And 9 times out of 10, they look at us and say, man, I'm going to have way more with you than if I try this thing on my own. And then they want us to go to work for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is something else that people don't realize is that those adjusters work. They're adjusters. Insurance companies, their adjusters work for the insurance company. You know, they'll use the language of helpfulness, but their job is to mitigate liability, not to own liability. And if you don't realize that, you'll realize it when you get a shockingly low check, and they underpay you. And they love it. When they know that the person you're dealing with doesn't have their own adjuster, that's really good news for them, because they know their job, unless they're dealing with someone who is a public adjuster, they know their job is going to be so much easier.
The state of Florida did an amazing study about 12 years ago, and it's called the OPAGA report. What it showed is in Florida, people that have their own public adjuster average 747% more money on their claim than people that try it alone.
Oh, I believe that. And then they be conservative.
That's true.
I totally believe that.
We've seen some massive spreads. Yeah, we're talking thousands of multiples on commercial properties, multifamily complexes, all the way down to little condo unit owners that get denied, and then we overturn them in a mediation, deliver 50, 60 grand, and change their lives.
Yeah, and I believe it was in Florida or the Texas Supreme Court that says that once a client makes a claim, that relationship goes from client to adversarial in the eyes of the insurance companies, which is a very shocking thing to say in California and Florida, knowing how friendly they both are to the insurance companies. But that's the honest truth, isn't it? In spite of how polite they are, this relationship is now adversarial.
It's unfortunate, and, we love to be able to advocate for people, but the truth is, like you said it in the beginning, if you don't do this for a living, you're already starting off at a huge deficit, and now's not the time to try to learn and figure it out on your own.
Yeah, that is really expensive on-the-job training. Really expensive. So talk about this. It's a long introduction, but frankly, all we talked about relates directly into your topic today. These principles we're covering are the ways you maximize your wildfire and hurricane insurance claims by making sure you got an adjuster just like they have an adjuster. But with that, give us a few more thoughts on this topic. This is so crucial.
Yeah, so, there's really two huge factors, right? There's the property itself, the inspections that are done, the documentation of the issues, proving what caused them, and then developing an actual scope of work and an estimate to be able to turn around and say to the insurance company, here's how much you owe me. 99% of the time, people file a claim, they throw their hands up and say, tell me what you want to pay me. That's a terrible position to be from. And then secondly is that policy. That policy is a critical element. Knowing the policy, knowing the laws that govern that state and the rules to the game, knowing the building codes, the manufacturing specs, the case law. It's like the four corners of a board, right? If we're playing a game and you don't know the rules, you're most likely going to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we're not talking, shoes and ladder. We're talking risk.
We're talking that game Life. If you ever played that game Life, where you wanted to have 4 kids.
Yeah, life is going to be not risk, which I think ties in very well for an insurance analogy.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you got to know what you're doing, and you don't want to learn. You don't want to have your education be getting destroyed by the insurance company. They absolutely love that. And so get your own, and ask tough questions. I love the fact that your background includes working in the industry. You know stuff that other people simply don't know. And I think that's imperative. You need the most well-versed soldier dealing with what became the enemy, your insurance company, on your side.
Absolutely. Yeah, that background selling the insurance policies for 5 years prior to doing this for 20 more paid huge dividends. And the truth is, the insurance companies would rather us not be involved. But with our company, Ask an Adjuster, they respect us. They appreciate us. We settle a majority of our claims through mediations and things like that, and we've delivered now over $2 billion to our Floridian and California neighbors, and it's been a fantastic honor in doing so.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's phenomenal. And it's interesting because being in a different type of insurance, I would talk to people who wants to tell me as we're selling insurance or helping them with a situation, all of their horror stories, including property ones. It's shocking, where, I had insurance, this storm came, it wiped out, and then they said, did you have wind coverage or did you have water coverage? What the heck is that? What are you talking about? I have property insurance, but it really is, that's like one of the most basic things when it comes to insurance. There are so many more that you have to know in order to thoroughly cover yourself. You should have both, particularly in a place like Texas. I would say also nowadays in Florida. It used to only be wind in Florida. Now there's a lot of water.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Different policies, a wind policy versus a flood policy, and then all kinds of nuances within those policies. Some of these policies, especially on a commercial property, they're 110, 120 pages. In the beginning, it's covered. In the end, it's not. And in the middle, it might be. And everybody's head is spinning.
Yeah, that's horrible. Final thoughts as we wrap it up.
Yes, definitely. So from my perspective, I was a real estate investor initially. I used to read Robert Kiyosaki's books as a young man, and I know he's one of the people that's endorsed your show. And I would just tell you that anybody that owns a property and pays for insurance should have a public adjuster in their Rolodex. It's just a natural way to do business nowadays. And first home buyers, real estate investors, commercial property owners, it doesn't matter. The more property you own, the more insurance you pay, the more valuable that resource is going to be. Yes.
Robert Kiyosaki told me that he had been on my show, he thinks, more than any other single program. So that's an honor. Always fun to talk to, and you're absolutely right. And you show at least your age, if not your experience, when you keep referring to a Rolodex as a place you have this information. We know Kevin Dunn is not wet behind the ears, that's for sure.
I'm only a young 47, but, man, I guess I'm a little old school, Yeah.
All right. Good having you on the program. Appreciate it very much. Give your website one more time.
Yes, www.askanadjuster.com. Thank you again, Mr. Kevin Price. It was a huge honor to be on the show.
Yeah, and that was a great. That's a great domain name, by the way. Congratulations. That's a one you want, a premium one. AskAnAdjuster.com, and that is Kevin Dunn. We're not related, of course. The first clue is we have different last names. But glad to have you on the program. You're listening to the nationally syndicated Price of Business. Stay tuned for more after this.